Hello, everybody, and welcome again to our Tech Tips webinar series. My name is Joel Bryan. I am the Global Director of Post-Sale Support, Documentation, and Services here at Legrand for the Raritan and the Server Tech brands. And for today's session, we're going to look at how to best utilize the STIC protocol, STIC, for configuring your PDUs and additionally with PowerIQ as well. The STIC protocol is a way to configure multiple PDUs without manually setting all the parameters in the GUI. Okay, and walking us through this session will be Bruce Leclerc, who is our senior post-sale support product specialist as part of our tech support organization. He's based out of Reno in our Server Tech home base office. Following the walkthrough, Jim Scher, who's the manager for the Server Tech tech support team, will open up for questions pertaining to this particular function and feature. And as usual, for anything that's pressing that's outside the scope of this, you could always definitely email us at support@servertech.com or give us a call, and we'll have a live person there to talk to you and help you walk you through any issues. Okay, so with that, I'm going to pass the ball over to Bruce, and Bruce is going to start us on the walk. Bruce, I'm going to make you presenter.
Okay, very good. Okay, see my screen, everyone?
One second. And there we go. Now we see your screen. So Bruce, it's in your court now.
Okay. Well, thank you, Joel. Welcome, everyone. 2 sessions ago, we discussed Startup STIC, which is this device. Startup STIC is a tool for configuring Server Technology PRO1 and PRO2 series PDUs with the basic information to get that PDU safely online on the network. It includes, IP addressing, performing an admin password change, enabling and configuring SNMP settings, and a little bit more, but really only the items that relate to initial startup parameters. That is, only items that will get the PDU up and on the network. It uses a small subset of what we will learn about today, which is the Server Technology INI configuration, or STIC for short, file format. And we will find information about STIC by hovering over support on the Server Technology homepage. We want to click on firmware downloads. We want to go to the PRO2 series section. Any one of the links will do. And then off to the right, we find STIC documentation. Take a quick look at this document. Okay, Server Technology INI configuration. In short, the STIC file format provides a means for configuring or modifying nearly all the configuration parameters of your Server Technology PRO1 and PRO2 series PDUs. It uses well-known text-based initialization, or INI files. And the file format includes creating new user accounts, modifying existing user accounts, adjusting access levels for users. You can modify LDAP or radius or TACAC settings. You can create outlet names, name outlets, modify sensors and power thresholds, and many other parameters that may need to be updated over time. It can also be used to change the IP addressing, subnet mask gateway, DNS entries, etc., if requirements of your network should happen to change over time. So in this session, we will review creating and editing an INI configuration file to achieve configuration goals. We're going to review various options for applying the INI files to the PDUs, and we'll even take a quick look at using the the bulk configuration capability of Sunbird's PowerIQ DCIM software for pushing common INI files to multiple PDUs at once. So let's just take a quick look at this document. We've got an overview section and then a note at the very beginning about format. Those of you familiar with INI files, text-based INI files, a semicolon is used to comment out a line, which tells the interpreter to ignore that line. You can also use a pound symbol. We've got some general rules, we've got some very exciting revision information. And then page 12 is where the information really begins. This is where from here on, the rest of the document defines all the properties and values that can be configured through the file format. Now, in addition to that document, which will be the primary reference, there are two other things you can look at. We're not going to look at those today. Rather, the way I recommend getting started with INI files for the Pro1 and Pro2 series PDUs is to actually log into one of the PDUs that is already up and on the network. So I am logging in at administrator level. Verify that in the upper right-hand corner. This is a pair of PDUs, a networked PDU and a link PDU. It is only basically at factory defaults other than the basic network settings to make it accessible over the network. And to find the INI file, we're going to go to configuration. And then in the system category, we're going to go to files. Okay, and in the files, you will find one config.ini. We can take a look at it here, but I'm actually going to save it to my local drive. Then we can bring it up in an editor. Okay, so the config.ini, this is effectively the template from the PDU, and we can remove items, we can add items, we can create little snippets and create our own INI files. I have created 3 already that we'll look at in a moment. But the first note concerning the INI file is that line number 1 is required. It must remain intact and indicate Server Tech INI configuration in square brackets. Line number 2 is typically, for most cases, going to be commented out. It specifies the network interface card serial number of the PDU from which I just grabbed the file. And if that line is not commented out, the INI file that we push to a PDU will only be accepted if that PDU has that network interface card serial number. So for most purposes, it will be commented out. Line number 3 is required. It is defaults to auto, and I just recommend keeping it there. The other choices are yes or no. What this controls is whether or not after an INI file is accepted, whether or not the PDU performs a soft restart. Some configuration items require a soft restart, some don't, and leaving it auto, it determines for itself whether or not it needs to perform a restart. So just a quick look at what can be configured. You've got options for access, so that allows you to specify TACAX or radius or LDAP, items like that. We've got branches. This is referring to current through each of the circuit breakers on a Pro2 PDU. We've got options for the command line interface. We've got options for cords with power thresholds, so you can configure thresholds for a variety of items. We've got all the options for setting up email notifications. We've got options for the humidity sensors and all their thresholds and what type of notifications you'll receive. We've got the ability to configure LDAP. We've got then for the lines for each PDU, you can configure current thresholds for notifications. We've got options for network. And I think I skipped by one. There was an option for group. Right now we see that nothing is present in that field, and that is because out of the box there are no outlet groups defined in the PDU. So that is blank right now, and that's where you would refer to the document that we looked at originally. You'd find that within that STIC documentation, it will define what the options are for that field. We'll actually put a demonstration of that. So we've got a variety of options, including the ability to name all the outlets and even configure wake-up states. I'm going to demonstrate that. And in this case, there's a total of 60 outlets, pretty long list. And then we've got phase options, thresholds. We've got the ability to change the data rate for the serial port. We've got radius options, SNMP options. SNMP users can be defined, removed, modified. Syslog options, and quite a bit more. So temperature, humidity sensor options, and on. There's pretty much everything you can configure can be done through the INI file. So I've created 3 INI files to demonstrate, and that's not because they can't be put all together in one. They certainly can. It's just that there are 3 ways that the INI files can be applied to a PDU, and I'm going to demonstrate all 3. So in this case, I've created an INI file that will name all of the outlets. It will create groups of outlets between the networked PDU and the linked PDU. And it will also set the wake-up state to off for any of the outlets that are not in use. I've also created another INI file that will define a login banner, and will create 2 different types of users. In one case, I've defined a new admin user, and you might notice that the password is clear text. That's not required. We do have a different option. You can use a SHA-256 hash to put in a secure password, and where you would find information about that, that's also in the STIC document. As we can find that information here. SHA-256 hashed hex string. So your INI files do not need to contain any clear text of sensitive information. Okay, and then finally, I've created another INI file to delete a user, and I will demonstrate that as well. So you can use the INI files to create, modify, you can change users' passwords. Now let's take a look at the first way that you can apply a file. Okay, so we're back to the PDU that we logged into originally. I want to show you first that all of the outlets are at their default names. These are out-of-box names for the outlets. We've got a 30 outlet network unit and a 30 outlet link unit. And presently there are no groups defined as well. So to upload a configuration INI file from the web GUI, we go back to configuration and in the system group files, and you'll find the upload or choose file button. It might say browse depending upon which browser you're using. And I'm going to select the one to name all the outlets. Okay, that was pretty quick. Let's jump back to control. And now we see that we have outlet names. In particular, I have got a switch at the top of the cabinet. Everything is dual supply. I've got a total of 18 ProLiant servers, and I've got a number of outlets that are not used. We jump to groups. We will now see I have a list of groups to choose from. The group function allows you to, with one action, bring up an outlet on both the network unit and the link unit so that dual supply devices can be rebooted or turned on or off in a single action. And I created a not used group so that all of the outlets that are not in use can be switched off in one action. I also mentioned wake-up state. Wake-up state is when the PDU is first energized, whether or not the outlet turns on in sequence or remains off, and you can now see that the outlets that are not in use are all set to off. So effectively, that allows you to prevent unauthorized power tapping. If somebody needs to plug something in, they need to contact an admin to get that outlet switched on. Okay, so that's one method. Just uploading from the web interface. Now I'm going to demonstrate using Sunbird's PowerIQ. I'm going to log in at administrator level. Okay, so PDUs are found in the facility items sections of PowerIQ. And this is where we also find the option for bulk configuration. Okay, we've got a list of PDUs. We need to go to activities. And here we find the bulk configuration activity. And then manage bulk configuration templates. Okay, we need to start by hitting the add button. And then we're going to go to the upload configs tab. It uses the clone function. We're going to hit upload. Now it says model name here, but this does not need to be the name of the model of a PDU. In fact, I am just going to give it a name of users. Enter. Need to select Server Technology as the manufacturer. We're going to browse and locate the INI file we wish to use. And optionally, you can put comments. I'm going to skip that for now. Okay, so we have a template uploaded. I need to highlight that. Click Next in the upper right-hand corner. And now we're approaching the page that allows us to choose which PDUs to apply the INI file to. I'm going to select two PDUs. Add them to the list. Okay, we find the selected PDUs down here. We need to highlight both. And then we're going to use the run option in the upper right-hand corner. Okay.
Hey, Bruce, I think that in the actions pane, we forgot to save the action
Thank you.
to do the
Yep.
config.
We did. I did. My apologies. I've done this so many times and I just missed it this time. Start over. Did not do that right again either.
Yeah, one of the keys for the PowerIQ bulk config template is, it's not going to let you proceed unless you have at least one action. So you can either select a config, you can change a password, update SNMP settings. You can obviously choose multiple actions at any given time, but it won't let you proceed and run anything if there's nothing filled out. So if you click Next up there, Bruce, on the top right, there you go. That will let us edit the existing bulk template. And click on that clone button.
There we go. This is where I forgot to click save. Done it 100 times. Okay. Now we're going to do next. select the PDUs, add them, and run. Okay, so this template is creating those 2 new users that I had mentioned, and it's creating a login banner for 2 PDUs. So the beauty of PowerIQ and its support of the Server Technology INI configuration file format is that you can apply it to as many PDUs as you desire all at once. So if, for example, you are actually not using Radius or TACAX or LDAP for user management, you're actually defining users at the local device level in each and every PDU. You do have a quick and easy way to create or remove or modify passwords for users. So if you have a person retire or move on to another department, you can easily select all the PDUs from within your PowerIQ and apply that template equally. Now, PowerIQ does always perform a restart. So if the PDU is receiving, they've both received the INI file. The one that we looked at first is presently restarting. As soon as it comes up, we'll take a look and we'll see that a login banner exists, and then we'll jump in and take a look and see that 2 new users exist. Following that, I will show you the third method for applying INI files, and that will be to use either an FTP client on the network or SFTP. Now, the FTP server in the PDUs defaults to being disabled, so and it's not secure, so we recommend, of course, using SFTP. Okay, we're going to log back in, and we see that we have a login banner at this point, so it accepted the file. And now I'm going to take a look at configuration access and go to our local users list. And at this point, we have 3 users. Out of the box, there was only the original admin user. And so the other 2 users in the INI file have now been created. And Bruce is a power user and the techmin was an admin user. Okay, so the final method is to use SFTP. I'm just using the Windows SFTP client. I am going to connect to the PDU. You need to log in at admin level. And then I will put the file to the PDU that I created that will delete that user. Okay, that was very quick. We refresh. And we now see that that user, Bruce, has been removed. And that concludes the presentation. This is a very powerful tool for configuring your PDUs, especially with PowerIQ, as it allows you to apply the INI files to numerous PDUs all at once. And with that, I will pass it over to, I believe, Jim.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Bruce. I'm going to unmute everybody and feel free to start asking any questions that you have. If we don't get any questions, then Jim has to sing and dance.
I encourage you all to hold your questions.
and just make sure that your device itself is unmuted. That way you can ask any questions.
You can also put the questions typed in on the questions or chat section, Mike. Oh, please don't make me dance. All right, I'm not seeing any questions at all. Are there limitations with PowerIQ INI configuring?
And there are. In fact, I have a link, but I don't think I'm sharing my screen anymore. There are some limitations relative to device-specific information that it strips out. An example is outlet names, and there is a link that that I can provide you to an online help page that actually defines what the items that it can't configure. But it's device specific stuff. So generally, if it's common items, user accounts, most of that stuff is supported.
All right. Another question was along those same lines. Can you configure all parameters with STIC?
Well, yes. The Server Technology INI configuration protocol, as far as configurable items, it supports everything. That doesn't mean that you can do things like upload a SSL or X509 certificate, but if it's a configurable item, either within the web interface or through the command line interface, the Server Tech INI file configuration file format supports the option. And it is only for the PRO1 and the PRO2 series PDUs. The earlier cabinet distribution unit series products, they do work with the startup stick that I showed at the beginning, but they do not have the Server Technology INI configuration file format support. So PRO1 and PRO2 series PDUs, these are the PDUs that run the version 8 firmware.
So with version 7 firmware, you would just use the startup stick?
Well, just to bring it up online on the network, there's other options you need to use for doing mass configuration.
And are there limitations with the startup stick?
Well, the startup stick spreadsheet tool is only tailored to creating INI files on the startup stick that will, configure the basics to bring it up on the network. But yeah, that's a good point, a good question, in that if you create your own INI files, you can put those files onto the startup stick and then use the startup stick to apply that INI file to the PDU. So that really is a fourth method. I didn't mention that simply because that, if you're using startup stick to apply an INI file, whether it came from the spreadsheet tool or your own INI file that you create yourself, you have to be present. You have to have local access to the PDUs in order to disconnect the link cable from the networked PDU and attach the startup stick for about 6 seconds. But that is another option if you have local access to the PDUs and you prefer to do them one at a time by walking down the row and clipping in the startup stick after you've put an INI file onto the startup stick. That certainly is an option.
All right. Well, it looks like it's it for the questions on the chat and question section. Thank you, Bruce.
Yep, and thank you, Duncan, for pointing out my failure to click the save button.
It's all good. All right, well, thank you all for joining us. We'll have another presentation next month. You'll receive an email with the topic and opportunity to register. And as Joel said, if you have any questions or concerns, you can reach us at support@servertech.com, or you can also call in to our 1-800-835-1515 and just ask for technical support. So thank you all for joining us. Joel, do you got anything you'd like to add?
No, just thank you, everybody, and once again, we'll see you again in our next session. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Bye.